Hi, I'm Paul Hardesty, and Turbulent Wake is my 5th novel, and it's just out now from Orenda Books. This is really a story about fathers and sons, about families. The whole theme of the book really is that Ethan Schofield, the main character, goes back to the place of his birth to bury his father. And in his father's house, he finds a strange manuscript, some of it typed, some of it handwritten, that seems to piece together episodes and stories from his whole life. And as his life starts to unravel around him, he starts to learn through these stories the secrets that have plagued him his whole life. What happened to his mother? Why was she taken away from him? What happened to his brother? Why did his father, when they were the only two left, why did he push him away? Turbulent Wake.
Good evening. Hi, I'm Karen Sullivan, publisher of Orenda Books, and you are tuning into another episode of Orenda Books at Bedtime. Tonight we're going to Australia to hear from Paul E. Hardesty, who is going to be doing something quite special. He's had a book trailer done, which is pretty much an interview with him talking about this book for his Australian publication, which is later in September. This is not a thriller. Paul is best known for his Claymore Straker series, which was shortlisted for the CWA Dagger John Creasy award, and this is something entirely different. It's based partly on his own personal experiences, but also takes into consideration all the traveling he's done as an engineer and as an environmental scientist around the world. This is beautiful, immense. In fact, the literary review said, a remarkably well-written, sophisticated novel in which the people and places all come alive on the page. So I'm not going to tell you what this is about because Paul's going to do it much better now, and he's going to read for us. Over to you, Paul.
Hi, I'm Paul Hardesty, and I'm going to be reading to you right now from my 5th novel, Turbulent Wake. And I'll start 2 chapters in so that I don't give away too much of the story. Collapsing infinity. He opens his eyes and looks out at the snow-covered parkway and across the steaming white rooftops towards the dim memory of the mountains. A breakfast, cold porridge, a plastic bowl of gaily colored fruit salad, slightly burned toast, sits on the bed tray before him, ignored. Overnight, snow had drifted up and swallowed the cars that had been abandoned the night before. He'd lain awake and watched their owners, one after the other, stall on the hill, trying for a while to free themselves as the snow piled higher around them, and then finally giving up, trudging towards the lights of the hospital. Now, a lone plow, its orange light flashing in the pre-dawn gray, fights against the burial, its big V-blade sending twin streams of road snow curling away like surf breaking on a West African beach long ago. "How are we this morning, Mr. Schofield?" It's the nurse, the pretty one with the freckles and the face of a 10-year-old, open and innocent, the skin so smooth and supple, her bottom lip in a pout. He notices she has applied some balm or gloss that makes her lips look wet. Something stirs deep inside him, shivers like an echo for a moment, retreats. She reaches under him and plumps his pillow and winds up his bed a bit so he can look outside without straining. She knows that's what he likes to do, does all day, every day. Stares out of the window across the winter city and the foothills that he can sometimes see in the distance if the day is cold and the cloud has moved off. Never the television. They must think he's crazy, all of them, with their drapes closed against the day and screens flickering the remaining hours away in front of their faces. "Did you sleep well?" she asks. He nods, doesn't smile. He's never been big on smiling. Perhaps it was because he'd never had his teeth fixed to make them look straight and white. They're good teeth, had outlasted other parts of the machinery. No decay, strong, did their job. It hadn't been later in life, after he'd married again and divorced, that he'd even realized that they were an issue for others. He'd never smiled much before anyway. He always wanted to be taken seriously, to be serious. Smiling wasn't serious. "No breakfast again?" says the nurse, checking his IV. He shakes his head. "No, thank you." "The doctor says you must eat." He pushes the tray away. This was not how he'd imagined it would be, not how he'd ever wanted it. How did it happen? Your life unfolded, you made decisions or didn't, things happen and didn't, and what you thought was an ocean stretched out before you turned out to be only a teardrop. "I want you to help me," he says to the nurse. She smiles at him. Her teeth are even and white, lovely. For a moment, he imagines that she was the girl who'd married his son, had borne his grandsons. "Of course, what can I do?" she says. Points to the IV line. Morphine. She checks the line again, his chart. "You can dose yourself, as you like." "No," he says. "I want more." He's conscious of his own voice, cracked and dry and old, a lot more. He looks straight into her clear, pale eyes. What beautiful children she would have made. He wonders if she knows yet that nothing else matters. She stands a moment looking down at him. "You know I can't do that, Mr. Schofield." "Why not? I'll never tell." He curls the corner of his lip. She doesn't flinch. "If you're in pain, I will speak to the doctor about changing your dosage." He shakes his head. "I like the pain." She doesn't understand. He knows. How can she? She still sees time as an ocean, can't fathom this most cruel of illusions. Maybe that's not so bad either, he thinks. Regardless, we're looking back at each other from different shores of this same ocean. The only difference is that I can see you, but you can't see me. Time is accelerated for me and passes still so slowly for you. Relativity applies. My only language now is the handful of events that I can recall that stand out among the thousands of hours and days passed undifferentiated in offices and schoolrooms and bedrooms. Necessary perhaps, but now I regret each of those wasted days. But these 24 or so times of my life, he thinks, these might be worth telling, remembering. The problem is I have no one to tell them to, no one left. Perhaps that in itself is one of the stories, how I came to be alone. And he wonders if these few moments are not shared, not somehow transcribed, will it be as if they had never occurred at all? And would it matter? He wonders if she would want to listen to his stories, those that might provide her with some glimpse of how to navigate the collapsing infinity between them. The nurse is standing there looking at him while he is thinking this. "Do you want me to get the doctor?" she says. He shakes his head slowly. "The doctor can't help me," he says, "but you can." Now I'll shift to the voice of the sun. March 5th, 32,000 feet. It's my second trip back to London from Calgary in as many weeks. Last week, he was alive. Now, he isn't. Both times it was Dad's lawyer, an old friend of his, who convinced me. "You better come out here," he said, "if you want to see him. He doesn't have long." And then there is the matter of the will, the house. You should be here in person. Robertson isn't happy about all the extra time I've had to take. It's busy right now at work, some big deals we're working on. Rachel, my daughter, isn't happy either. She makes that very clear to me now every time I see her. Last month on our weekend together, I took her to the Imperial War Museum. She hated it. Complained every step of the way. Finally, I gave up. We walked out into the rain and took the tube back to my flat, where she spent the rest of the day messaging her friends until it was time for me to take her back to her mother's. Maria's never happy. I've reconciled myself to that now. It started years ago and just deepened. Looking back, I knew it was happening, and for a long time I tried to make her happy, to conform to her expectations. It took years, but when I finally realized what she actually wanted, I gave up. It's been worse since we split somehow. Angrier, more specific. Does somebody always have to lose? I try to stretch my back, push my legs out, but the aluminum frame of the seat in front digs into my shins. Twisting onto one side helps a bit, but the pain in my lower back won't abate. I've gotten soft. I'd never admit it to anyone, but I know it's the truth. My core is weak. Fat has settled around my waist. All this time in airplanes and cars and offices has made me soft. Everything now seems an exercise in control. Hold back my emotions. Rein in my temper. Restrain the physical side of myself. That part of me that always felt the most natural, the most real. Working with my hands. Fighting. Riding fast. Really fast. I try to get to the dojo or out for a run whenever I can, but there always seems to be a reason not to go now. Weakness breeds weakness. I'm a shadow, unsexed. And though I know there are no answers there, I keep reading. Thank you. Hope you enjoy the rest of the story.
Thank you so much, Paul. This is, again, an incredible book. When Paul was talking about it at Newcastle Noir, I can't even remember. All the dates have gone funny with this coronavirus thing, but I think it was last year. Everyone in the audience was in tears. This is moving beyond belief, and I so recommend it. If you pick up something new, make it this one. And thank you so much, Paul, and we'll see you next week for another episode of Orenda Books at Bedtime.